Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Kramer. Our guest today is Matthew Finlin. Let's get spiritual about growing your business. Welcome to the show, Matthew.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's start by talking about what you are doing with your business and how you are helping entrepreneurs really in this realm of growth, but taking that spiritual foundation and bringing it into them as an individual and into their business for growth and expansion in all areas, including financially.
Yeah, great. So thank you again for having me on. So what we do with Human Potential Academy is we help entrepreneurs through what we call the 5 pillars of human potential, which is the financial pillar, the physical pillar, the emotional pillar, the mental pillar, and the spiritual pillar. In Western society as a whole, we really separated all of these different modalities. And as a byproduct, I've met so many people, millions and millions and millions of dollars, and their emotional and physical and spiritual pillar are in shambles and they're unhealthy, unhappy. And then on the other end, I've met entrepreneurs that are mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically sound, but they're broke. They have no idea how to do sales, negotiation, management, and all of the entrepreneurial skills. And so what we do is we put a focus, and really our vision and mission statement is bridging the spiritual and the scientific worlds, because we believe they're saying the same things. And more science is proving spiritual concepts that have been spoken about for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, particularly around ways of thinking that turn into ways of being, or ways of being that turn into ways of thinking, depending on how you want to look at it. And bridging also this emotional, spiritual world with the finance sector. So we have a I almost said army. we have a team of coaches, and the coaches specialize across these different fields. So we have some people that are specialized at helping entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, with basic business tactics and tricks and tools and systems that they may not be familiar with. And at the cornerstone of what we do is something that's called adversity quotient or adaptability quotient. It's called AQ. We know about IQ, EQ. There's something called AQ. And when you're a budding entrepreneur or an entrepreneur at all, you have to be able to pivot. And that can be, I see that's where most entrepreneurs, budding ones, actually fail, is they get egoically attached to an outcome. And we always say be committed to the vision, but unattached to what it looks like. And so the path is not necessarily a straight line. And so we help a lot with budding entrepreneurs. And then we also, and this is what we're really, really excited to really step into a lot more, is working with those high level CEOs that think like the classic is strong mental pillar, strong financial pillar, and then struggling or even suffering physical, emotional, and spiritual pillar. And so this type of person will have like guilt around the disconnect from their significant other and their children, and they're respected at their workplace, but it's from a place of fear, not from a place of joy and happiness within their company culture. And more we're seeing these people with all this money and all this intellect being unhappy, being unhealthy, and being like, I want more, but they're afraid to like dip their toes into like the spiritual sauce because of all of the stigma around the broke, dirty hippies that are gallivanting around naked in the bush. And so and this is where the spirituality and science really comes together, because we've been able to, and this is definitely like arena of my expertise, is like explain to these intellects what's going on scientifically through a lot of these different spiritual modalities. And so we're bringing a lot of attention and focus on helping these people not just create a better relationship with themselves, but create better relationships and work-life balance with their work and their family. And then the final thing is in regards to company culture. So in the next 5-10 years, the companies that are going to be around are going to be the companies that provide the best culture for their people to work in, especially when we see like AI coming on the scene. And so people have opportunities of where they want to work. Like there's an abundance of entrepreneurs providing places for employees and contractors to go to. And the ones that survive are going to be the businesses that are people before profits business models. And so we call it the old way of doing business. It is not the new way of doing business, which is really going to be about the user experience of the people building the business and the mission. So we bring a lot of focus on this kind of like how to restructure and make a conducive political ecosystem within the business models.
Within what, 5 minutes there, you've pretty much summarized the mass majority of all entrepreneurs, regardless of what stage they're at. And I would guess that our listeners are able to relate to one of those categories, even if it's maybe somewhere they've been before. Maybe they have transitioned beyond that startup phase where you need to be flexible. You need to pivot, like you said. We've all been there. And I want to focus a little bit on the spiritual side of things, because I know that was a tripping point for me for the longest time in my business. It was over 12, 13 years now when I was working on the website for my hypnotherapy practice, and I was finding verbiage that sort of encapsulated the work that I did with clients. I finally was able to sort of settle into and say, kind of blending science and spirituality, because that was really what I was trying to do as well, is bring an awareness of the metaphysical side of, my understanding of how the universe works with the sort of the science of the mind and hypnotherapy and all of that stuff, and bringing that into kind of this old school transitioning into new school way of doing business. Mm-hmm. But I had so many of my own beliefs about the old model of doing business that kept tripping me up, thinking nobody's going to take me seriously if I bring any element of spirituality into the work that I'm doing. If I love working with business owners, and I do, then it's going to be off-putting. And what I found was, of course, limiting beliefs, right? But what I found was there is an element of truth to that, but a lot more entrepreneurs progressively, we're seeing it more and more, but it's I think there's always been a lot of very conscious individuals who are inspired to do business, but they, like you said, there is sort of this wobble with their pillars, where they're either really comfortable with their spirituality, but then they have all of these sort of limiting beliefs or blocks around, what does it mean to be a business owner? Do I have to be a sleazy salesperson? Do I have to be all centric about profit? And there's like this inner conflict. Or then you have that classic business owner from the old school model who is just an asshole to all of his employees, doesn't care really about anything except profit. And I think more and more we're finding that balance, but there's still a lot of, it's like going through any type of growth. It's awkward. And so the work that you're doing here, I'm curious, because I'm sure a lot of people are saying, I know that I'm really shaky in that one area, and I feel like it is something that's important to me, whether I'm pretty solid in my business, but I can feel that, it's taking its toll on my relationships. And I really want to have that, as a valuable piece of my life. When somebody comes in to your business, are you doing some type of assessment with them? How are you getting in there and finding out where they're weak and where they need that extra support?
Yeah. And So yeah, we ask. Yeah, we ask, and 9 times out of 10, people say, like we'll have a new entrepreneur come through the door and they want to make $10,000 a month, and we're like, perfect, we can definitely help you do that. And then the first month, we're talking about the relationship with their dad, and they're like, "What do you mean? Like we need to be doing sales and goal setting?" And we're like, "We can't even get there because even if you make the 10,000, you're gonna have such a and this is an example, but you'll have such a self-imposed image of unworthiness around that you're just going to lose it right away anyways. And so what we always do is we find out, we ask them, typically in our discovery call, we'll ask like, what are 2 pillars you want to build and why? And usually it's emotional, spiritual, actually, yeah, physical or financial. Yeah, mental seems to be, people think they're pretty solid in that pillar. And then we have a, yeah, so we ask, yeah, we ask, they tell us, and then we have a kind of like a, it's like a foundational program that we call a psychological resilience and goal achievement process systems, and we can build all of the pillars off of that. It's a, and I love that you do hypnotherapy because brain waves for me is one of the bridges and gateways between helping the spiritual people come back down into a scientific 3D whatever grounded understanding of what's going on. And then it's a really great way to help the people in the scientific box begin to shift into a spiritual way, because you're talking about frequencies, you're talking about all these things, and there's some scientific backing behind it now. So that's been my bread and butter for about a decade. You know, and you said about 12 years ago you started doing this, and you would have been right 12 years ago that people would have been like, you're too in the spiritual sauce. But we're going through a spiritual psychedelic renaissance right now, and uh, many people, high level business owners, low level business owners, employees, contractors, my mom, are kind of like opening their eyes to that we've fractaled all these different pillars, and really it has to be a cohesive model to move forward. Yeah, so yeah, we just ask them, yeah, and then they tell us. And
I think most people do have some awareness of their sticking points because they keep bumping up against it. The challenge seems to be when someone is convinced that they need to, say, make a certain amount of money in order to feel better, or they have this idea that they have to achieve some kind of external in order to change the internal, or they have to have financial security before they can embark on their spirituality. And people have these wacky things that are really, sticking points in their evolution, and kind of keep them stuck where they are for way longer than they need to be if they would just be more open to a holistic process of healing and growth and goal achieving.
I mean, most of the time, if you think you need financial pillar to build spiritual pillar, it's opposite. You need spiritual pillar to build financial pillar. And I know for my journey, I've done this dance with my physical pillar and my financial pillar. And then a couple of years ago, I was just like, I'm just going to focus on physical pillar, because as I was speaking with potential clients, I had this question, which was, out of those 5, financial, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, if you could only have 4, what 4 would you choose? And sometimes people go, huh, no, 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 no. Other times people are like, and it's always the same. It's always spiritual, mental, emotional, physical. And why is that? Because if you have those 4 intact, inevitably the financial pillar will follow. And even if it doesn't, you'll be close to God, you'll be smart, have great relationships, and you'll be physically sound inside and out. So you'll be happy.
Right now, someone who has been maybe struggling, they're looking maybe somewhat desperately for a solution. We have this idea that we need something to fix us. We need the right marketing tactic. We need the right spiritual guru. We need the right modality. I found over my many years of working with clients that I can tell where they're at in terms of, you know, their beliefs based on that sort of, I tried everything else and I think I need hypnotherapy, or, I just need the right coach, or I just need the right marketing thing. Right. And for those individuals who are listening, who are thinking to themselves, is this the right? Is this the one, right? Is this the thing that is going to be the thing that is finally going to resolve my financial trauma, or is finally going to help me with this health condition? Maybe they're 20 or 30 pounds overweight or whatever it is, right? What would you say, knowing what you know? What would you say to somebody who is looking for the fix, knowing that what you offer can be the fix, but that the approach, the mindset actually needs to be a little bit different?
So when I'm working with people in our like initial when we start out, I let them know that there's going to be something that I'm going to be saying a lot to them. And we're taking data. And so it's called the Courage Program for a reason. It's also just aside from the other things I mentioned, it's essentially an anti-action paralysis program, because they might be right. Maybe they do need that marketing thing to take it off. Maybe they do need that spiritual guru. Maybe, but you don't know. And just sitting in a state of rumination and fear is guaranteed going to prevent it from happening. So the two things that I would say is, okay, I don't know how much your listeners know. You would definitely know when I say this, but if you're in like a high beta brainwave state, high beta brainwave is when your limbic system, your fight or flight response of your brain, is hijacking your prefrontal cortex, your ability to have planning and emotional regulation. So you're in a high beta brainwave state. It's a fear response. It's a fight or flight response. And the only way that we enter into this is from looking at the past at something we cannot fix, a negative past, looking into the future at a negative hypothetical situation, which almost never actually happens, or in the moment with self-deprecating talk. And none of that matters. Like, we need to look to the past to find the traumas that are causing us to enter into these high beta brainwave states. Great. We figured it out. Some bad things happened to you, and now you're going into this state. But focusing on this present moment with self-regulation. So the combination of in the moment self-regulating techniques when you enter into a high beta state. So being in an alpha state, a low beta state, a regulated state, being calm and in that state of love instead of that state of fear, combined with you don't know. And I also say up the numbers. I say that a lot as well. So it's like in our program, we go fail, 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 succeed, instead of just like, oh, like I think I need this thing. And it's like, so if that's what you need, that's what you think you need, go. And if it doesn't work, good. We know what doesn't work. Let's find the next thing to go. And that's life's journey, right? We think we know what we need. We get it. It doesn't help, or it does help. And as soon as it helps, we need another thing. And so it's just about taking that action. And it's a lot easier to do when you have a person like us that is like saying, this is the right thing, that is holding that accountability and almost bearing some of the weight of that fear of the unknown for them. So yeah, just go do it. And there's no such thing as failing. There's only learning.
I love that. I love that you brought it down to earth, in the sense that it's not about just one fix. It's more of, if we were to use an analogy, right? So the physical pillar, you want to get in shape. Well, you don't just go to the personal trainer and you spend
Mhm.
maybe a month or two with them, and you're in better shape than you've ever been before. And you say to yourself, all right, okay, guess I'm done now. Either it didn't work as well as I wanted it to, or I didn't give it enough time to get the gains, or maybe it wasn't necessarily the right one for me, but I actually started to get some momentum going in the right direction, right? It's more about what is this the big journey here, right? So if you care about your physical fitness, you're not just going to say, all right, well, I took a crack at it, right? You're going
Yeah.
to, keep sort of layering on the goodness. You're going to embrace the fact that you're improving. You're going to enjoy the gains. You're going to appreciate the improved energy and endurance and strength and the way that you have more confidence and you feel better about yourself. And you don't want to stop there. You don't abuse it necessarily and say, oh, it's everything I've ever needed, and then exclude everything else in life. It's a part of your sort of overall awesome life, right? And in business, I know there are a lot of, I mean, we talk about it a lot when I have people come on who are kind of tactics based, right? They're talking about the social media marketing or, whatever. It's
Hmm.
something, SEO, right? Content
Yeah.
marketing,
Yeah.
and there is so much going on in the business world that I see. Even really, really spiritual business owners get so tripped up over this. I think even more than sort of the non-spiritual, business owners who are kind of bumping through things. But there's so much confusion around, do I just need the one thing? Do I have to do this thing? Do I have to do all of these things? If I
Mhm.
don't do that thing, then, oh no, does that mean that I'm missing out on this, or that? Does that mean I can't be successful if I don't do that? And I love that you brought it back and you said, so if you try something and it doesn't work, so be it, whatever, right? Because it's not a single sum game. It's not like, oh shit, that was the only thing that I could try, or that's the only thing that I could do. That was not the only exercise, that I could do, or the only personal trainer that I could do. What is the big goal? And what gets to be sort of a part of that journey as we are kind of cleaning up some of those weak areas and improving ourselves. So then we talked a little bit about the 5 pillars, and you mentioned that people sort of with the mental one. I thought it was really, really quite humorous what you said. Everybody thinks they're okay in that area. Except
Yeah.
for like a couple people who really are like, okay, shit's just not right in this area. For the most
Yeah.
part, right? People they'll admit, okay, my emotions are really out of whack, or I, was angry about, my parents forcing me to go to church, and so I just swore it off, and now, I have spirituality is no longer a part of my life, or whatever, right? Like, people recognize those things. But what is it about the mental pillar? I'm really
Mhm.
curious. Like,
Mm.
when you're helping people in that area, even though there may be a little bit of denial, like,
Mhm.
how do people build up that part of themselves?
It's a good question. So the mental pillar is what you know. And there's two aspects of what you know, right? There's what you know that you know, and there's what you know that you don't know. So for example, I know that I don't know how to do open heart surgery, right? I know that I don't know how to do that. Then there's the I know that I know how to do sales. I know that I know how to connect spirituality and science through a handful of modalities. But there's this other massive, infinite piece that is the don't know you don't know. Things that you don't even know that you don't know. And so within the mental pillar is this consistent debate, this consistent these consistent adversaries, which is the one side that is holding on to the existing belief model, which we shouldn't write off completely. People call it the ego, and they're correct, but the ego isn't always bad. If you program your ego, your autopilot, this is my model, to be immaculate, then the ego is your best friend, because now your 95% decision-making choice is beneficial and good. And then there's this other part, which is, they call it right brain, left brain. So left brain holds on to the existing belief systems, and the right brain constantly tries to override it. And with most people, it fails. And so how to develop this, it's essentially, it's also something called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when you have two contradictory belief systems. Like the classic is something like, I want to have a strong, healthy body, and then they stay up late every night eating junk food and sleeping late and not drinking water. Cognitive dissonance, right? You're lying to yourself. I deserve a healthy, compassionate relationship, but I'm not going to leave my abuser. Cognitive dissonance. And so the key is rectifying this cognitive dissonance and aligning those two thought processes, where your fixed data pattern recognition from the past model is open to being changed and plastic, while also not so naive that it is constantly being overwritten and doesn't hold any sort of structure.
So interesting. So then the example that you used, which is one that I will oftentimes use, a similar one, right? One of the modalities that I love to teach my clients is EFT, because it really does, it gives people so much self-empowerment to work through challenges as they come up. And with EFT, we do the setup phrase to get rid of the psychological reversal. And that's basically what we're talking about here, is you've got those two conflicting programs. The one is, I want to lose the weight. I want to lose this 20 pounds. I know I'll feel better. I'll be healthier. I'll feel more confident. It's a self-loving thing. And yet, even with that desire being so strong, and all of the beliefs that it's a good thing to do that for themselves, they're holding contradictory beliefs that cause them to go and immediately or chronically self-sabotage, right? Like, oh, I'm going to do it this time. And then they go and they binge eat the cookies or the ice cream. And so everybody has a little bit of that going on. Everyone, right? Any area where we're challenged, where we're struggling, where we're setting goals and we're not seeing any progress, there's some of that stuff going on. There's those contradictory beliefs. So then what you're saying here is that's part of that mental pillar, correct?
Yes, I define essentially, like in the Bible and many other contexts or texts, it talks about the free will, right? The right to choose. And I define the mental pillar as it's the free will bridge into the spiritual pillar. And so, and I've had some really interesting conversations about the difference between personal development and spirituality, really interesting conversations. But the reality of it is that, you know, Buddhists talk about mindfulness and observation, and awareness is the seed of all religions and all spirituality, all of them. And there's this concept of baptizing or waking up and all these different things. And what is that? It's becoming aware, it's looking. And we talk about this self-sabotaging thing. And it's a really interesting thing, because in reality, the ego wants to stay safe and the same. Now, safe is, you know, safe. Safe means the same.
The
And
same,
so
yeah.
they say that 95% of your subconscious mind, your actual actions and what you do and move is 95% your subconscious mind and 5% your conscious mind. And so the conscious mind sets out the I want that thing. If it's not aligned with that 95%, you are up against, you're fighting a losing battle, because you've got 5% I want this, and the 95% that says I want to stay the same. And without awareness of that 95%, you're destined for failure every single time, because your autopilot program, you say, I want to eat healthy and become healthy and good looking and strong. And then your ego's like, but you're not that right now. And I don't want to change. So you go 10 steps that way and I got to pull you right back. And the ego is very, very clever. So we have to be aware of that process. And when we become aware of that process, we can begin to identify these autopilot programs that the 95% is running, which is, again, 95-5 is a big, no one's going to bet against those odds. So we have to have that serious awareness about this autopilot program that our ego is running.
Right now, you probably scared a couple of people because they're like, oh man, what hope is there? But we wouldn't be doing this work if it were not possible, right?
It's worth it.
But we would have been out of business a long time ago if this work was not possible.
Oh, and it's so worth it.
It is absolutely worth it. But it does require real commitment, because that 95% is it's gonna have a little bit of a temper tantrum. It's gonna have a little bit of a fit. And it's, our self-justification is a real bitch, right? So we will find really good excuses for why we should stop or we shouldn't do it, right? Like you said, and I always say too, the mind can be really, really tricky.
Yeah.
And that wholehearted commitment, it seems to me, and I know, you will hear references to it kind of in esoteric ways in like the Bible and various different spiritual principles and teachings. But there is that phenomenon that we all sort of understand on some level, that you really do have to be fully committed to break through and make a change. And I think that a lot of people know that they have a desire. They know they want better. They want to lose the 10 pounds or the 20 pounds, or they want to take their business to the next level. But they're still wrestling with so much of that self-doubt. And you call it, the ego, right? It wants to keep you the same. It wants to keep you safe. And so the ways that it stops us, it's like it's perfected them, right? They are so believable to us. They seem so incredibly convincing that if you don't have that level of conviction, that absolute unwavering sort of commitment, it's too easy to just say, oh, it just didn't work. Oh, it's another program that didn't do anything for me. Or it's, it's another diet that, doesn't actually help people lose weight, or whatever it is, right? So for those who are ready, they're committed, they know they want to change, they've been listening to you, and they want to go to the next level. Can you share with our listeners how they can connect with you?
Yeah. Just before I do that, you're referring to something called backwards rationalization, which is a byproduct of cognitive dissonance. And so, don't want to scare off people, but I also have to speak the truth. And the reality is it takes a minimum of 180 days to consciously reprogram your subconscious mind. 180 days, half a year. It's not 40 days to redo a habit. No.
21. Come on, Brian Tracy said it's 21.
No, that's maybe once you've started, right? You're welcome to the beginning of this. To really rewire these programs, it takes a minimum of 180 days. And there's this saying that says accountability is the glue that holds commitment to results. And so for the I almost said the readers listening, for the listeners, that is at the center of what we do. The 95% ego program that you've been running for 30, 40, 50, 60 years is going to win the battle. And when it does, you don't want to enter into the shame game. And there's ways there's very simple, easy to understand ways to have this psychological resilience and adapt and go through this adversity. And so if you're interested in connecting more, You can find us online at humanpotentialacademy.org. You can find our Instagram at Human Potential Academy, and you can always reach out to me directly at Matthew Finlin on Instagram as well.
This has been a great conversation. Whenever I have these types of conversations with guests, I always feel like we almost did a little bit of a disservice because we just gave them like so little, right? So little in the grand scheme of things. But sometimes that's just all we need for the right people to get the message is going to like reverberate in their beingness. And they're going to say, okay, game on, I'm ready. Let's do this. And that is them, taking their step on their path to achieving that better quality of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Matthew, for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. It was great. That was an awesome conversation. I appreciate you. Those were great questions. Thank you, Alicia.
Well, I really hope that our listeners enjoyed it as well. I, of course, have to thank our listeners. This is why we're doing this. And of course, if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so because there are so many amazing guests like Matthew that we get to talk to each and every week. So with that, we'll see you in the next episode.